here, and I'm a member of the Rails issue team. That technically means that if you open an issue on GitHub, I can look at it, flag it, eventually merge your documentation pretty fast. But for open, it means that I care about making Rails better, more powerful framework. And one of the things that people love and hate sometimes about Rails is callbacks. And I want to talk to you about how callbacks are going to become a little better in verse 5. And both for beginners and for advanced programmers to have less misleading callbacks and understand a little better what's going on. So here we go. This is really, if you leave this talk with just one thing, this is what I want you to remember, and this is the, I would call the big change in callbacks in Rails 5. I'm going to leave this so you can read it. I think it's an example that you can understand. Let's say that you have a user class, and whenever you save a user, you have this flag that says the user can be an admin or not. And if you didn't set this flag, you want to make sure it's not an admin. So it's a normal user class. So if you have this user class and you just try to do user create in Rails 4, or Rails 3, it's not actually going to create the user. If you do this in Rails 5, it's going to create it. And so that's the change that I'm mostly going to talk about. And the reason why this happens is, I think it's one of those sort of conventions that have been with Ruby and with Rails, that if the callback method, like in this case, setting the output to false, if that callback returns false, then the side effect of that is that the whole callback chain halts. So all the other callbacks that you have are not going to be executed, and the method itself, in this case save, is not going to be executed. So at some point this sounded like a good idea. If you return false, it's, maybe it means you don't really want to execute the action. But then, after a while, it didn't seem like a good idea anymore because it was kind of hidden. It wasn't really the single principle of the surprise or even single responsibility, because you're not really saying that you want to stop the callbacks. And so there was a discussion about this on GitHub, and it looked like a good idea to actually change this behavior. This is the same code that it was in the slide before. I just constructed the callback into a method. So it's exactly the same thing. You have this before callback, and it sets some default values before the user is saved, and that one value is set this admin to false. So let's see what happens in Rails when you try to create an admin. It works because this self.admin and equal false, it's gonna return true because you're setting admin, or false. These all is true. Everything works fine. The admin is created. If you just do user.create, then the same method is going to do self.admin, which is nil because you didn't specify it, or false. This is going to return false. And the user is not saved. And this comes straight from the Rails 4.2 implementation. If a before callback returns false, all the later callbacks and the associated action are cancelled. If the after callback returns false, all the later callbacks are cancelled. And it goes, it might be misleading sometimes, especially for beginners. And this is what's going to happen in Rails 5, and it's actually already happened in Rails Master because this PR 1.7.2.7 has already been merged into Master. If a before callback throws abort that symbol, all the later callbacks and the associated action are cancelled. So the the value that is actually returned by the callback is not going to matter anymore. You can still have the callback chain halted if you want to. But as a result, the same example I showed before, the return value does not matter. Your user is created. So this might affect your application if you're going to create your app from Rails 4 to Rails 5, and I'm going to explain you how to deal with that. And I just want to show that, let's say that you still want to start the callback chain. So let's say that you want a callback that actually only saves the user if the user is an admin. You can still do that. And this is the code that you have to write. You actually have to throw over. It's an admin. And so it's this change from sort of an implicit behavior to an explicit behavior. And I've seen this kind of implicit behavior being hard to debug, and I've seen at a recent Ruby conference someone talking about how hard it was for her to find out that that was the error. So I hope this helps, makes this application clearer and easier to understand without losing the hour of callbacks. Okay, so let's see what happens if you want to update your code from Rails 4 to Rails 5. As I explained, if a before callback returns false, in Rails 4 this has a side effect, in Rails 5 it doesn't. But of course, we don't want people to upgrade from Rails 4 to Rails 5.0 and just see everything not working because of this. So Rails has a deprecation policy, and what it says is that if something changes, like in this case, then when you upgrade from a release to the next, so from Rails 4.2 to Rails 5.0, then it's still going to work as it was working before, but you're going to get a deprecation message. And then when you move from Rails 5.0 to Rails 5.1, it's going to have the new behavior by default with the deprecation message. So this deprecation policy has been applied here. So if you have a Rails 4.2 app and you upgrade it to master right now, to Edge Rails, or when Rails 5.0 is released, you upgrade to 5.0, then what's going to happen is that all your callbacks are going to still work as they used to work. You're just going to get a warning. This is how the warning looks like. If you have the code that I showed before and you try user create, it's still going to respond with record not saved, and it's going to tell you deprecation warning, return false, and callback would not implicitly halt the callback chain in the next release of Rails. To explicitly halt the callback chain, please use abort instead. So hopefully the people who did not attend this talk are gonna be gonna know what to do in that case. And this gives you a sort of a time slot to upgrade your applications, so you can safely upgrade your application from 4.2 to 5.0. Then you're going to start seeing these warnings if you ever return false in your callbacks. If you never do that, then you're pretty fine. When you start seeing these warnings, it's up to you to decide if you really mean to halt the callback chain, then you're just going to replace this with throw abort, or you return false, like for instance in this case, I'm just returning false implicitly because I'm just setting the flag out into false. I don't really mean to do anything, so you're not going to change that. So you can do that, and once you're done fixing your code like that, once you know, okay, I'm using the callbacks in the new way, you can decide that you don't want this deprecation warnings anymore. And so you can set this method, ActiveSupport halt callback chains on return false, which means you don't want the value returned by the method to halt the callback chain. And this initializer is the same initializer that you're going to see when you actually start a new Rails 5 app from scratch. So this is what is going to tell Rails, well, this person is just building a brand new Rails 5 app, so I'm just going to use a new forward, and if it's not there, then it's going to think, well, this is an app ported from Rails 4.2, and I'm going to show the way. And so this is the main part of my talk, because I think this can affect people and might surprise you if you're upgrading your application. And even if you are gem maintainers, you want to make sure that when you start upgrading your gem to Rails 5, if your gem uses callbacks, like for instance for authentication or any other kind of process that requires callbacks, you make sure that this is the way you can upgrade your code. And that's it for my main part of the talk. And I'm actually going to go, I want to go to other things that are going to change your callbacks. But I think if you guys have any questions on this specific part, I want to answer them now, because then I'm going to explain other things that change the callbacks. So, do you guys have any questions?
So for observers, is it the same behavior when it ends up happening? So I'm bored from an observer, you want to hold it.
So the question is, what happens with observers? Are you talking about a specific gem? So the question is, what happens with observers? Observers were removed from Rails. You can still use them in gems. Like, I don't remember now. So it depends on the gem.
Is there a way, is there going to be a version of Rails 4 that includes the ability to throw a board, so we can include that statement in Rails 4 and then we'll just move over to Rails 5? Or is there any way that we can be able to access that behavior before we get to 5?
So the question is, can we throw a board in any Rails 4 app? The answer is no, and that's because this is a breaking change. So this is one of those changes that actually require a bump in the release of Rails. So, and that's simply because the next release after 4.2 is going to be 5.0. If the next release was 4.3, then the answer would be yes. But, so if you use 4.2, that's why there is this deprecation policy. You can simply upgrade from 4.2 to the next one, which in this case is 5.0, and then fix that. And by the way, when Rails 5 is going to be out, there's usually a guide on how to upgrade an app, and this is already documented there, even though the guide is not out yet, but it's going to be explained there once again. But that's also why I thought it was important to explain this today, even though Rails 5 is not out yet. Okay, well, are you guys happy about this too? Okay. So, other things that are going to change with callbacks in Rails 5. This is easier to understand. So, let's say that you have, in this case, this is action controller. Let's say that you have this skip before action. So, what this does is, in action controller, you can use callbacks as well. So an example could be you have a before action authenticate. So you have a bunch of controllers that always require the user to be authenticated. So you just put it in admin controller or application controller. So all your actions are going to have that before callback. But then you have some specific action that doesn't require that. so you can use this skip before action. The problem is that if what you're passing there, it doesn't exist. So I wrote another method, but let's imagine that you just have a typo. Instead of authenticate, you use authenticate, something like that. In Rails 4, nothing is raised. It just ignores it. It's like, okay, he wants to skip something that doesn't exist, so I'm not going to run it. So there was a PR about this, 1909, that's a little bit merged. And in Rails 5, this is gonna raise an error. Say, hey, before process action callback, unknown method has not been defined. So this, might help. Okay, because probably if you wrote that skip before action, you actually meant to call a method that exists. So if you had a typo, then I think it's useful to just tell you, hey, I can't skip that method. So this is one of the changes. And then here's another one. There is this other method in Action Controller called skip action callback. What this does is callbacks can be before callbacks, after callbacks, around callbacks. So what this does is it tries to skip authenticate, whether it's a before, whether it's an after, or whether it's an around. It's basically the same as typing skip before callback authenticate, skip after callback authenticate, skip around callback authenticate. You just write that in one line. So this skip action callback, it's powerful because you write one line with 3 lines of code, but it's actually going to be deprecated as well, and that's related to what I just talked about before. It's better to have you explicitly say what you want to skip. So if you want to skip a before callback with a specific name, then you're better off writing skip before callback with that name. So eventually, if that before callback doesn't exist, you get an error. Instead of just saying, oh, skip anything that matches that name, and then if nothing matches the name, you don't get anything back. And so this method is going to be deprecated. It's the same deprecation policy as before. You're just going to get deprecation warning in Rails 5.0, and that's going to be gone in Rails 5.1. And then is another change. So this is something that was changed from Rails 4.1 to Rails 4.2. So if you have an after commit, so let's say you say after commit save and then something, for instance, after commit save of a user, you want to send an email to a user, then it's going to send an email to the user. But if inside that after commit there's any kind of error, or you even raise it's an error, like you just want an error, in Rails 4.1, nothing was happening. This was changed in Rails 4.2 to actually show a deprecation warning. And so what's going to change in Rails 5.0, because it's next release, you're not even going to get a deprecation warning. So it's actually going to work as it was intended, meaning that if you raise an error in after commit, it's going to raise the error. So in 4.1, it wasn't raising the error. In 4.2, it is showing a deprecation warning, and this is just the last one a little bit still. I like to show you how this deprecation policy works. It's always trying to, for each release, keep the old behavior as much as possible, but give deprecation warnings. And then the next release, you just have the new behavior applied. And so these are some of the changes in callbacks. And my last slide. The slides are there with my speaker deck. And I can take other questions, or I can talk more about callbacks. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay.
So, thank you so much for being open lecture on Rails. But working with the big Rails map, I see that a lot of developers use like concept-driven development when
the question is, well, okay. First of all, I never heard. Oh, so the question is, what happens if you have a model that has a lot of callbacks, and you were talking about callback-driven development. Okay, maybe callback has some stuff. So when you have a bunch of callbacks, and then, okay, this is where I want to go. When you have a bunch of callbacks, and so you really have all the logic of your application inside the callback. So the question was, is there any plan to kind of explain in the Rails guides how to use callbacks better? So personally, I think this is an issue. I don't know about Rails guides talking about that. I know there are many blog posts talking about that. And let me just arrive to where I want to arrive, and then I can go back. So if you Google Jonathan Wallace, and he has this blog post calling the problem with callbacks. And this is what he says, and I completely agree with that. Use a callback only when the logic refers to state internal to the object. So this has nothing to do with Rails 4, with Rails 5. This is, personally, I think it's always a good idea, or at least something that it's good to ask yourself when you're writing a callback. Am I writing a callback because, like the example I showed before, I'm setting a default value in the user itself, or am I running a callback because I just want to kind of hide some other behavior that has to happen, and I'm going to hide it like in a callback, like in an after save, instead of putting maybe in the controller or maybe using ActiveJob. So the answer to your question is, I think it's like you can technically do whatever you want with a callback because it's just a method. But to keep sanity and to keep the business logic where it's meant to be, my advice would be just to follow this rule. And an example that I made here is if you have a callback like this, that you say, well, after you create a user, then you're going to charge this user $50 on Stripe. If you do all of this in a callback like that, there can be things that, I mean, things like, first of all, this has to run while your process is running, so it's gonna, Unicode task worker is gonna wait for Stripe to come back with the DB transaction, and so it's gonna make things slow. The second thing is, even if you just use RailsConf and you say, oh, let me just create a user, like a test user, then this is gonna run. So then you're gonna have to mock it and do all these kind of things. So it's just that callbacks are tricky in a way, and it's really up to us to use them in a smart way. A way that, like, I would suggest two approaches. One would be, if you can use ActiveJob, that's in Rails, that's a good thing, because ActiveJob is now going to actually wait for Stripe to come back. It's just going to queue the job, and then the job is going to run in the background. The other advice that I can say, maybe this thing can go in the controller if you want, so if you use the model, it's not going to affect that. There are other ways to do that. You can use Ruby objects, so you don't say add user, you create an object around that. There are many ways, and that's what I can say. So the callbacks are tricky, and I think it's just up to us to just use them in a way that it's sanity for development. Any other question? Yeah.
You may have mentioned this in this, but did the callback change of how callbacks are altered affect just ActiveRecord callbacks or ActiveSupport callbacks?
Okay, so the question is, what I just talked about, does it only refer to ActiveRecord callbacks, or does it refer to ActiveSupport callbacks? So, callbacks are used in Rails in ActiveSupport, controller, ActiveRecord, and all of that. And what I talked about is in ActiveSupport, which means that it's going to affect everything. So the example that I made before, the user said, I just made an example of ActiveRecord, but this new kind of terminator it's in ActiveSupport. So now the fact is that that returning false halted the callback, that was not in ActiveSupport. That was specific to, for instance, ActiveRecord. So it's changing it there. If you have other libraries or gems that use ActiveSupport callbacks, they could already define their way of terminating. So now this is the default. So now if you forward, but you could already say, hey, terminate when somebody returns 42. You could already do that. So specifically, ActiveRecord was saying terminate when it returns false. But you now can use that to abort in ActiveSupport. This is hard. But it's fun. Any other question?
Okay, I think I cleared it up for does my random gem now still use this behavior or doesn't use the new behavior, but I didn't quite get from that whether the controller callbacks are still going to halt the request chain if you return false, or do you now have to use the throw abort?
Okay. The question is, what happens with action controller? Will return false change or not? Now, my memory might not be perfect, but if I remember correctly, returning false, the action controller was not. Anyone remember that? I think so. It does? It does? Okay. Then in that case, the answer is the same as ActiveRecord. So you can still define your terminator if you want. And I think the answer to all your questions is, let me go here. Okay. The answer to all your questions, I really invite everybody to go on GitHub/rails/post, and the pull request is 17227 because it's really a very long discussion. And so, if you guys find anything that you think it's not, well implemented, or you find some edge case, feel free to comment there. And RailsConf is not out yet, so this, I thought it was a good idea, but maybe I forgot something, and there are edge cases that have not been taken into account. So please, by all means, go there. That pull request has the code change, and it also has a very long discussion. So if you want to read through and then understand if it was missing, please do, and then just mention. Or you don't even need to mention because I'm following that discussion, and I'm gonna reply.